Hi, Bella.
Good morning, Kino.
Oh, good morning to you. Good evening to me. But
Okay, good
same
evening to
time.
you. That's right.
Yeah, how are you doing?
I'm still waking up, but I'm doing very well, thank you.
Are you a
How
morning
are
person?
you? Well, the cat wakes me up pretty early, so yeah, that's always fun. How are
But
you?
no, I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for accommodating the time change. Much appreciated.
Oh, you're
Even though it's
welcome.
so early, upper 6 in the morning, starting off for the podcast. Imagine that. So, what's like your normal morning routine? Like, there's no podcast scheduled.
I would normally wake up and go and watch the sunrise if it's
Yeah,
clear. Yeah, I start the day with sun gazing. That's one of my most empowering practices.
yeah,
Yeah.
Hawaii. What an awesome place.
hmm
This is the first time I've actually had a guest from Hawaii, so that's another milestone for the show. So, how is Hawaii? Is it like how we imagine it? It's how we see it in the movies?
It's paradise. And that's not to say that there aren't
Mm.
problems that we see in other places. There's people without homes and people who are, struggling to pay rents. The availability of accommodation is, uh, there's not enough housing for people. The housing's very expensive. There's a lot of people with a lot of money who are coming in and buying up homes so as their second or third homes and actually displacing Hawaiians. So now there are more Hawaiians that live off island than on Hawaii, which is tragic, really, because what is Hawaii without Hawaiians? And but the
100%.
yeah but the beauty is it's it's the most powerful medicine I know. With the lush landscapes and the beaches and the rain and the rainbows and just the air, the wind, the ocean.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's been the best medicine for me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can imagine. Can imagine it, yeah. Just like vision it. And have you always been in Hawaii or did you relocate to Hawaii at a certain point in your life?
I haven't always been in Hawaii. I was born in Australia and I lived there till 2000 when I met and married an American and moved to Southern California, which was just hell for me because I was born in the country. So to go somewhere where there's
Yeah,
like houses as far as you can see and 6-lane freeways, well, they're 12 lanes actually, like going all day and all night, and people everywhere from north of LA to Mexico was just horrible. So
chaos.
I yeah, chaos and just, I mean, any type of city living is very disconnecting from people, to be so disconnected from nature and to have noise all the time
Yeah,
and have to accommodate other people. It's very stressful and it's not very good for anyone's mental or physical health, and certainly wasn't good for mine. So I, when that situation fell apart, I knew I needed to move, and I had family in California and family in Australia. So I decided that Hawaii was a good place in between. So I came here in um, 16 years ago, 2008.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll always get two types of people, like people who prefer, the quiet far away from the city and people who actually prefer, the hype of a city.
hmm
And I
That's true.
guess any country you go to, there's a split of both, and depending what you're looking for. Like at times, even with me, like I feel like I need noise, but then I also need quiet. So like I'm in the middle between the two.
Whereabouts are
Um,
you?
I'm in Johannesburg in South Africa.
hmm
So if I had to compare, have you ever been to South Africa?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so if I had to compare where I am, it's like being in New York or Los Angeles in the States.
Oh, right.
That's the type of vibe. And you get your quieter regions, throughout South Africa, which I'm not going to lie to you, I do prefer at certain times. I can't tolerate it as much. Maybe if I give myself like a month or 2 months, but then, back in the hype again. Also depends on the nature of, what you do for a living as well, that can
hmm
dictate, where you have to stay. But
Yeah.
anyway, anyway, um, So, Bella, it's a pleasure having you on the podcast. I'm not going to lie to you. When I first read about why you wanted to be on the podcast, I was overwhelmed emotionally and I was overwhelmed professionally. Now, the emotional side of it is given, what I read about you. The professional side about it, being on three podcasts, I had to put down exactly where to have you on because you can bring so much value to all three podcasts that I am on. And I know we have a date for you on Talking Back to Suicide, which is later this year. So I thought, let me put you in on this podcast and I'll explain the mandate of this podcast to you soon. But there's also another podcast that I'm on that I co-host and produce, which is called Creating Team Human. And it's co-hosted with an author that's based in Canada. So I'll send you some details about that. I'm not going to mention too much about it here. And then you can let me know whether you want to come on. But I know you would definitely want to come on when you read, what's the mandate on that show. So when I was reading about you, I had to pin down, I even got it here, I had to pin down different components about your life because you can filter in to those audience on those three different shows. So with this podcast, I want you to start off, you can give a brief history about yourself. But the mandate for this podcast is for independent creators, and it's a platform for creators such as yourself, being an author of two books, to come on and, chat a bit about their life and of course about their work. And in between, based on what I've jotted down for this podcast, I'll ask questions that I feel will be relevant to independent creators. Because I want to learn A to Z about you, but unfortunately, we can't do it in 45 minutes to 1 hour on one show. And between the three, there's audience. The audience is split between, people who listen to all three, but then there's an audience that will listen on a specific on that topic.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, the introduction and all three will probably be the same, but then we'll go into more depth, about your life, like on Talking Back to Suicide, talking about, the trauma that you have experienced in your life, which you can briefly mention here, because one thing I focus on is on the trauma that independent creators do face in their life, which, results in them not living their best life, whether they want to be a musician, singer, songwriter, producer, an author, an illustrator. So, there's a lot of psychological blockages that happens up here, and I face it also in my life, So, we can start off, you can chat a bit about your history and we take it from there.
Okay, and thank you for giving me this opportunity too. I really appreciate that, Kino. Thank you.
No problem. Yeah, so I mean, you can start, just about, you shall know you're from Australia, but, just as an artistic person, bit about yourself, because I love to build an intimate relationship, between the guests and the audience, because then they get it. Okay, no, I understand where, she's coming from and look at where she is now. I can also get there.
I didn't consider myself an artistic person for a long time. I think because I couldn't paint or draw, I actually didn't consider myself an artist at all, but I've been a photographer since got my first camera when I was about 5. So that was probably my first art form. That's really, I've continued on to this day and branched more out into videography, just more recently, really. But the photography has been, it's so healing for me to just be focused on natural beauty. That's the main thing that I take photographs of. Yeah. And so I grew up in the country in Australia and I had animals, I rode horses and had a very a sort of idyllic country life. But back at home, things were far from idyllic. My parents went through an extremely toxic divorce, and that sort of set me on a path of just being really lost and suffering. Really, that's when my suffering started. And I met. I went to college and I studied to become a teacher, and more specifically, a teacher in outdoor education. So I was teaching rock climbing and bushwalking, canoeing. And then after college, I went on to work in a program that took young people who had psychiatric disabilities or had a psychiatric diagnosis, and we took them through a long-term outdoor education program to improve their mental health, being outdoors and in nature, but also to increase their self-esteem and to give them life skills. And it was a really powerful program. And through that, I met a man who eventually became my husband, and we started a life together. He was also working in this field of outdoor education, but he was in the corporate area, so taking companies into outdoor settings for team building, and and also it ended up really being for personal development at the base. And we started a life together. We were living on land. My dream has always been to be as self-sufficient as possible. So we had fruit trees and vegetable garden and chickens, and we had a child together. And when I was 3 months pregnant with our second child, he went off to work. He was running a new company at the time, working with a large group of employees from a telecommunications company. It was the first day of the job. I got a knock on the door at 10 o'clock in the morning from the local policeman and a neighbor, and I was told that he'd been found dead at work. So that was the end of my dreams. That was the loss of my beloved, my soulmate, my dream of a family, and my dream of life on a farm, because I couldn't keep it up by myself. We were chopping wood and carrying water. Was not I wasn't able to keep it up by myself, and I was pregnant. So that sent me on a really downward spiral. Then I just wanted to die. And the only reason I didn't was because I had 2 children. I didn't feel like I had the right to do that when they were already, they're already traumatized. So I went on a long journey, which included I just had to find somewhere that felt like home again. And I stayed in a lot of different places. I traveled to India. I started on a spiritual path before. I was raised an atheist, so I didn't really I had a lot of brainwashing about there being no higher power, and that anyone who believed in a higher power was a subhuman. So I connected with higher power, which I'm going to call God, because that was a word that was used with disdain in my household. I don't have a religious, I don't have a religion. I have an immediate connection with God, which is, for me, is through nature. And once I had that connection, then that really engaged me more in having a life wish rather than death wish. Only unfortunately, that took me on I continued on that path and met a man who told me he was my guru, and I believed him, and I left Australia and went to live in America with him in his ashram. That's what it was called at the time, with his disciples. And I took my children with me, and we lived there, which was hell, for about 8 years. And then he had my son murdered because he was a pedophile and a rapist, and he was about to be exposed. So he took my son, allegedly, I'm supposed to say, took my son's life, framed it as a suicide, and then that was, I really wanted to leave this world. But once again, I had children because we had a daughter together. But I knew I had to get out. I went along to see this guy who'd been it was a cult. It wasn't an ashram. It was a cult. He's a cult leader. All these things I've found out since leaving. But I spoke to this man who used to be the cult counselor. And this was after my son had died. And I walked in the door and he said, you're in a cult, don't you? I said, no, I'm in an ashram with my guru. He said, go home and Google cult characteristics. So I Googled cult characteristics. And sure enough, charismatic leader who's the arbitrator of truth and controls everyone's everything, from what you eat, when you sleep, what you do with your time, where you work, who you're with. And I realized I was in a cult. So I needed to get out. But of course, he's using his brainwashing, mind control. And I'm just going to use this word. We didn't talk about curse words, but mind fuckery. That's pretty much what happens in a cult. You just get really, messed up. He used all these terms now that people are familiar with, but, gaslighting to make me feel like I'm crazy. I said this, but I didn't say that. And that just went on all the time. And after my son had passed, he told me things like if I left the cult, the ashram, that I would be screaming throughout the universe for the mistake that I'd made, and he wouldn't let me take my daughter. And so he was blackmailing into me staying until I finally think that he realized that if he made me stay, he'd have another death on his hands. So he allowed me to take my daughter, and we came to Hawaii. And that was when my healing really started. And that was when I started understanding why I got into that situation, which was basically like a lack of self-love. My mother had a narcissistic personality disorder, was an alcoholic, and was incapable of love. And so I had to learn to love myself, and which happened through deepening in my connection to nature. So I haven't worn shoes for about 8 years. I mean, when I go out, I do, but usually I'm barefoot to stay directly connected to earth, to get the earth energy, to keep balanced electromagnetically, because really we live in this electromagnetic chaos. And the only way really to balance that out is to be connected to earth. So I stayed connected to the earth. I started practicing sun gazing every day to get the highest light form, the highest information into my brain through my eyes. And that it was actually one day when I finished sun gazing, I went and sat under this coconut palm, and that's when the information about writing down what I was learning came. I thought I was going to be writing a book about grounding and the importance of that, but it went way beyond that, and the information just kept pouring in and pouring in. So I just basically started, writing, and that's how my first book, The Putting on the Armor of God, came into being. And then when the whole scamdemic started, another book came through me.
That's funny.
And then I've just finished this book. I just published this book, New Human of New Earth, and that's like 825 pages. So what really happened was I suppose it's like a creative portal opened up in me, and I was able to receive information. I was able to collate information, and then write it down in a way that is now a book with some. It's basically a remembrance of how to be human, because so much is being forgotten and suppressed and ignored, because we have a human body, and we are a spirit being as well, but we have to take care of our human needs primarily if we want to be optimally physically and mentally healthy. And that means being connected to nature, being in nature, eating natural foods, breathing clean air, drinking clean water. And it's not natural for a human being to be staring at a screen all day. It's very disempowering for us. We might be getting information in, but that's not really sourcing us in a way that's going to keep us healthy and happy and balanced. It makes people really sick to be on the screen all the time and relating to life through a screen rather than through the natural world. Miss out on a lot of it's obviously these devices serve us in a lot of ways. Like there are ways of being creative. I do Photoshop, so one of the areas of my artwork that developed was using Photoshop to combine images of religious iconography, actually, and then the nature, and combining them together, and it's called Divine in Nature. So, these technologies, artificial technologies, I'm calling them, service in some ways, but really not as a human being who's here to evolve and grow and learn. So that's a summary of where I'm at now. And it's been a hell of a journey, but I no longer suffer the way I used to suffer all the time. And life was pretty unbearable. But after time and work and focusing on my healing and focusing on writing and doing podcasts, talking to other people, sharing this information, I'm in a far better place than I was.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing I want to say is thank you so much for being so open and transparent. And as you just said, sharing this information. It takes a lot, for someone to like come out and say, this is my past, this is what I've been through. It takes a lot, especially on a open platform that, is shared with the world. Thank you for your contribution towards humanity and sharing your story, which, I know, no doubt, is going to help someone out there who's possibly going through the same thing, which can go into like a deep state of mental illness that will lead to suicide, instead of working, through it. You talking about your story of being in a cult, it's like a movie, you know? It's like a movie.
A
Like
horror movie.
I got to ask, yeah, like I mean, is he still around? Is this cult still active?
Yeah, the cult's
Has he
still
ever
active.
tried to like come looking for you?
No, but I think I'm pretty sure that he monitors me. I'm pretty sure he checks in on my social media and my YouTube channel because he knows that I know. I know what he's up to. I know that he's a fraud. He's a murderer. There's
Yeah,
been several more suspicious deaths in the cult. One of the cult members who's was there for almost 20 years recently took her life because she found out what he's really doing. He's presenting himself. He says he's the second coming. The Maitreya, the Kalki avatar, the one who's here to save humanity. That's his claim to fame. And
yeah,
so we
yeah.
were all his disciples to help him with his mission. And well, she found out there's a clique he's got around him, his close group of people that knows what he's up to, but he's convinced them that they're so evolved, that they're so healed, that they can somehow reconcile the fact that he's has a sex addiction, a porn addiction. They can reconcile that fact with he's also the savior of humanity. It's like I said,
Yeah,
mind
yeah, yeah.
fuckery. So he's
Mine.
still operating in Southern California. He has it's really interesting cult because he's managed to have that fine line between just enough people who pay him money every month. It's called tithing. So everyone who's around him or is in his presence has to pay 10% of their gross income or whatever, the house sale, car sale, gifts, whatever, to him. So that's how he's funding himself and his lifestyle. But not enough to gain more sort of public attention. And the role of whistleblower is the one I'm taking on. And it's not that I want to see him behind bars because we're at this point where the evidence that's needed to do that is it's long gone because my son died almost 17 years ago now, and the witnesses are older and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, he's still operating. He has most of the same people around him. I don't think he's growing in numbers, but he's able to run the same con on the same people year after year after year.
And the authorities, okay, we know they know good anyway, but is there any way of like shutting him down, reporting him anywhere?
No, I've tried that, but like I said, there's no evidence now. My son's body was cremated, so there's no way of corroborating my allegations plus other people's allegations that what was my son's death was what do they call determined to be a suicide, but it wasn't. And we know now. And at the time, I was so messed up that I couldn't even think straight. So I wasn't able to say, "Hey, wait a minute, let's do an autopsy." I wasn't in that frame of mind. And now it's too long past that point. But what I'm seeing happening is there are a lot of cult leaders being exposed, a lot of cult leaders and religious leaders being exposed by people who've been subject to their to rapes and to having their money stolen and to being physically abused and emotionally abused. So it's when the people from the cult escape, and then they speak out, and other people join in, and it becomes a movement in a way to expose the cult leader. So I've been speaking out when I get the opportunity. There's one other ex-cult leader in Australia who's also speaking out. But one of the things about this cult leader is that's particularly it's different from other cults is that he did such a mind job on people that most people are taking a long time to recover. Like it took me years to speak up and speak out. And also, so people need to get through their trauma to be able to, come to a point to understand what happened. And then you got to get over the shame and the guilt. And, oh, my God, people say, oh, but you could have walked out any day. Well, yeah, I could have. But that's not how it works when you're in a cult. So the undoing of the cult programming and the mind control takes a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it's an ongoing process. So the people from that cult are still working through that. And then what was happening with the men in the cult was he was creating this these sexual relationships with all the men and convincing them that they're gay. So he's having these he's having trysts with all the men, and they're all. I don't know what he's saying, but you can bet that he was talking about loving them. So the men have been particularly damaged because they've been taken through this, this not only mind rape, but also, actual rape, and they have to come to terms with what actually happened. So there's no men speaking up about what really happened to them at this point. And in fact, most people just want to bury it and go on with their lives. Which is, everyone has that choice, but there's also a time to speak up, because that's also part of the healing too, to be able to speak about what happened so that other people can understand what situation they might be in, or how to recover, how to live after the cult.
The thing is, you can more in the States, it'll be labeled, a cult. But in South Africa, or even whole of Africa, if I look at it, these cults are sugar-coated, covered up as, a component of religion. Because what happens in South Africa is, there's always a new church popping up. And it's not even popping up like in a building. You'll see it in a park, just open fields. They don't even have a building. And there's all these followers and, a man of God. And then I look at it, I'm like, nah, this don't make any sense to me. And then I see some of the stuff, that people actually put themselves through. And then I wonder, and it's one of the questions I'm going to ask you, why do people follow these people? What's going on with them, psychologically, and in your situation, what you went through? What makes people want to follow these people and listen to these people and do what they're telling them to do? Are they lost? Are they psychologically damaged? What is it?
It's wounding from childhood. It's not having not being loved and not being supported, not being seen, not being protected, not being taught how to set boundaries, not being not given what a child needs to develop as a fully empowered, balanced, adult who's able to use common sense. It basically comes from a really. It doesn't even have to be that much of a messed up childhood. You don't have to have major trauma, but just not getting needs met so that you don't trust yourself, don't have a connection to your intuition, don't have a connection to higher power. So, lost. I suppose lost and floundering. I didn't love myself. So as much as I could say, he has a narcissistic personality disorder. And I know this is it's a very hot, common topic to talk about, because a lot of people have a narcissistic personality disorder. It's been something that's been our modern culture is cultivating. So it was all well and good for me to point the finger and say he's got a narcissistic personality disorder. He has no ability to have empathy. He can pretend like he was a trained actor, so he can look like a normal human person, but actually he's demonic. He has, evil intentions, and I just didn't see them because he was telling me the things that I wanted to hear. That I was a good person, that
Right.
that I had a purpose, come with, come and you can, because I wanted to make a contribution to the greater good. And that's the thing about cults is most people get in there, they have good intentions, but there's something, let's call it like broken or missing, because
Like
they
they're playing on your
we
vulnerabilities.
that's what it is. It's an
They know your
emotional
vulnerability.
vulnerability.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is,
Yeah.
by not having that direct connection to God, to a higher power from childhood, then one tends to look outside oneself for that type of direction. And the truth is, we don't need any intermediaries. We don't need anyone to tell us what God's saying, or what we should or shouldn't be doing. If we're connected to the higher power, a higher self, or great spirit or universe or whatever, then that information comes directly to us. We don't need anyone to be in that relationship with us. And from my understanding, all religions are cults, all of them. So it's really only
Yeah.
just when it's,
Yeah.
having a direct connection to God is the way to go. And that took some time for me to establish that, and then trust that. Because it's all well and good to say, oh, you listen to your intuition, or look for the signs, the way that nature's talking to us, because it does. There's nature's consciousness, or everything in nature has consciousness that can communicate to us, help us, teach us, guide us, whatever it is. But the point is to be aware of that, to be open to that, and to be listening to that, and trusting that information and acting on that. And that takes time too, because after being in a cult, my trust in myself was shot. Like, how am I ever going to, God, I just made the worst decisions of my life, and, I'm a broken human being. And it takes a while to come back from that. And it's still a work in progress. But people are looking for.
You're right.
Oh, I just wanted to say the one thing. So when I realized has a narcissistic personality disorder, what does that mean about me? Why am I attracted to that? Why am I following him? And it's because I have a self-love deficit disorder, which is also, that's what's characteristic of a narcissistic personality disorder. But I look for love outside myself. So I was looking for, guidance and affirmation and appreciation outside of myself, rather than actually feeling that within from the start. So that's how, for me, it was. And that was a perfect match. Someone with a narcissistic disorder is a perfect match for someone who's codependent and looking for love outside themselves. And it's the perfect match.
It's like we live in this world where it's so emotionally driven, and people are just looking to belong, you know, and where can I belong, and who is going to accept me, and it's sad in a way because you're not accepting yourself for who you are. You're not learning how to be alone and connect with that higher power, connect with that divine. And you're 100% correct in saying that, look, all religion is a cult. And those who are conscious enough or have awakened, will realize that. I'll even use my own life, because this is what I love the show to be about, up a Catholic, you know, and just like many out there, of course, abiding to my parents. I mean, they were quite cool, but, because they should attend church every Sunday, of course, I was part of it. And I followed the church, not God, not the higher power, the church, right? And one day I woke up and I also started asking myself those same why questions, and I started questioning stuff, and I just stopped going to the church because it just wasn't working for me anymore. And I just needed to follow my instinct in what it was telling me. It led me to Thailand. It brought me back from Thailand. But going to Thailand was part of the journey for me because then I could really start connecting. And I realized I didn't need to connect. I didn't need the church to actually connect to the higher power. It's hard to explain the stuff to your parents these days, but I just avoid the conversation of all. And what was it like last week when the new Pope was elected in, and I saw, millions around the world celebrating. And I'm thinking to myself, there's millions around the world who are starving, they don't have homes. Yeah, the Catholic Church can fix all of that, but they don't. But we know why they don't. But why are the millions of people not asking the same whys that I am asking? You know? Are you so brainwashed that you can't look beyond that and ask yourself, why is there so many wars happening in the world? Why are so many different religions fighting with each other, racial differences, cultural differences, killing each other? But here we are celebrating a new pope. It doesn't make sense to me. It really doesn't make sense to me. But it makes sense to millions of people out there. But unfortunately, I don't know what to do about that. I don't have the solution, I don't have, we can come on here and you can speak your truth and I can speak my truth. But, there's a difference between listening and hearing, and some people, they just are not going to be able to see the truth for what it is, unfortunately. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Well,
yeah.
the thing
So,
is
I mean,
that I was just going to say we've been raised to and educated and controlled to live and think inside a box. And that's what happens from childhood, through the whole education system, where the education system simply makes people think inside this box, not question authority, not ask questions, and just remember and regurgitate pretty useless information. So all that time where we could be developing our critical thinking and our creativity and our individual selves, we're jammed into this control system that and then gets spat out to continue on being part of the workforce and the 9-to-5 grind and the making money and the getting debt, all that. So people are living inside this box and not asking those important questions, and that's all by design. All those systems, from the education system, medical system, the religions, the legal system, science. All those systems serve to keep people controlled, to keep people limited in their thinking, and to keep people pretty sick, really, physically and mentally, because people who are healthy, strong, clear-minded aren't going to go along with the programs. They're going to question. They're going to not do what the government tells them to do if it's not the right thing to do. They're not going to, compromise body autonomy, and so these systems are in place to keep people controlled. This is one of the things that once I left the cult, I understood cult programming and how it works. Then I saw how cult programming is working on a global scale, and how humanity itself is being kept in this cult, with the brainwashing from the television and the cell phones and the movies and all that. That's all brainwashing. And then there's all the way that the food's controlled, so people aren't getting nutrition, so that your body can't function, your brain can't function if it doesn't have nutrition. People being told not to eat fats. That's what the brain fuel is healthy fats. So we're being basically dehumanized and kept in this mind prison, so that we're really taken advantage of here. And most people don't want to question that, because then once you start questioning that, once you start saying, hey, wait a minute, the government isn't serving me. They're not here to serve the people. They're here to serve this criminal cabal, or the medical system. That's not here to serve people. That's actually killing more people than it's helping. Once a person starts to question that, then your whole world view comes apart, right? Because everything that you believe in and trusted in, and the way that the world you thought the world was, comes apart, and that's terrifying for people, because it's like, then what? illusion. Once you see through the illusion, like people think that like this talk about, you know, evolving consciousness and waking up, and it's all about rainbows and butterflies. It's not, because once you start to see through the illusion, it's absolutely terrifying when you realize the extent of the ways that humans are being manipulated. Terrifying, but there's always there's the divine. You know, the fact is that us as divine human beings, that there's nothing and no one can really keep us from being who we are and living a full life here.
Yeah. This just goes back to, you know, what I said at the start of the show. You know, there's so much to talk about, and I just want to split it up, you know, between all these 3 podcasts I'm on, because all this is just so critical for the development of humanity, for us to just be more united, to be more conscious, be awake,
Absolutely.
you know, and get out of this illusion, because that is how we are going to live, you know, together, you know, in a manner that is like, you know, we're not fighting, we're not killing each other. So definitely.
Our birthright, right? That's our birthright, to be living in harmony with each other and with nature, and where harmony is such an abundant place. No one should be hungry. No one should have no home. You know, no one should be sick and suffering all the time. These are all imposed conditions that, you know, I hear people say, oh, it's just human nature. No, it's not. It's not human nature. That's not your nature. That's not my nature. Your nature is to care and listen to people and, you know, be a good person. So, you know, there's another force that we need to recognize is in effect. And, you know, there are ways to get to where we need to be as individuals and as humanity, as a species.
As a whole. Yeah.
First you have to recognize the problems and the situation, right? You have to see the cage before you can get out of it. If you don't recognize there's a cage, like a cage, I'm calling it a cage for consciousness, it keeps people limited. If you can't see the cage or recognize there's a cage, there's no way out. You can't ever free yourself.
Yeah,
and
100%.
Continue as they are. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. No, we are definitely going to, you know, go into more depth, you know, on the other podcasts to come. So where I'm going to go next, you know, in just over 15 minutes that we have, is as a creator. So earlier on, when I, you know, labeled you as a creative, you know, I was like focused on, you know, the books that's out there. So with your 2 books, you know, starting off with, you know, the first one, like, what can readers expect from that book?
That book was written it's called Putting on the Armor of God. And in that book, I am sharing my understanding of where we are as a species and what was happening. That was written in 2000 at the start of the big scamdemic. So I was explaining that situation, that this was a fraud that was being imposed upon us, and that there were very dangerous medical procedures and experiments that were really best not participated in. And I was also offering in that book a lot of natural medicines and tools and natural body technologies that can be used to optimize physical and mental health, and providing a vision for humankind, you know, where we do live in harmony, like I was saying. And then I had actually started that book, that New Human, New Earth, before that book. So that was just like, it was a burst that came out of me, and I wrote that in about a year. And then I went back to finishing the other book, which is really, you know, they both are on the same topic. It's just the New Human of New Earth has a lot more information about the technologies that we have in our bodies, from our breath to the movement, to all these like physiological processes that I can't get into now, it's too much, but we actually have these processes, natural regenerative processes within us that happen so that we can renew ourselves. You know, the yogis of the past, or even, you know, other times, could live for hundreds of years. They could choose when they came in and out of their bodies, and that's still available to us. We just have, like I said, we're being kept limited understanding about our bodies. And then I've also included a lot of the medicines in nature. I've mentioned the grounding, the sun gazing, also like eating living foods, making sure that your water has the highest vibration possible. You can talk to water, you can bless it, and it's going to be a benefit. You can grow plants, and plants that are edible plants, and those plants will grow with specific medicine for our bodies. That comes from a teaching from a woman called, what's her name? It's the Ringing Cedars series. Anastasia. Was basically a wise woman that lived in the taiga in Russia. And so she's taught about plant medicine, how to grow plants so they can optimize their health. So there's so many natural medicines. Also, there's like crystals and sacred sites and what are they called with the stone structures? Megaliths. From the not just the pyramids, but there are lots and lots of megalithic sites all around the world that have healing energy, or they might be, they expand consciousness, they teach. And so I've included a lot of the different medicines that are available in nature, and then a lot of the spiritual technologies that we can access as well. So that's pretty much it's basically what I write about, is natural medicines and natural healing.
How we can live the life we're actually supposed to live.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Not just this 9 to 5. Right. Because most people aren't really living life. It's very sad. A lot of people suffer. Yeah, then they're just existing and thinking that
exactly.
And now we've got 2 generations of people who've lived life more through screens than they do through the life. But like being a human being and thinking that that's life is relating to a screen before you relate to another person or an animal or the sunset or the sunrise. It's it would be easy to get very depressed about it. Except
as you said earlier on, it's built by design. It's all built by design. Anything that you see happening in the world today, it's all built by design. We think if we vote for a specific political party, they got our best interests. They actually don't. And we think, okay, because one president has a dispute with another president in another country, they have our best interests. They don't. I compare politics and I compare government to WWE, right? It's wrestling, It's all a show on the surface, but behind the scenes, it's all planned out.
Absolutely.
It's all planned out. They're all at the same table having a meeting, discussing, okay, this is the next plan. This is what we're going to show them.
Right.
It's all planned out.
It's all planned, and all sides have us on the same track, and that's towards technocracy. So we're controlled by, one screen to rule them all. That's, where everything's headed, regardless of what's coming out of these politicians' mouths. And it just reminded me about politics being like WWE. I remember when I found out that was fake, I couldn't believe it. I'm going, oh no, they're really doing it. They're really doing it.
Me too.
But then I found out, and now it's the same. Like, oh, they really do care. No, they don't care.
And you know what's so crazy about it? Okay, we on the same boat with that. Even when I was in school, it was all WWE. And it was later on in life that I found out, just like you, it's all planned. And then when I watched, like clips from WWE, News 2025, and I'm thinking to myself, they are still making millions of dollars. There's still thousands of people, packed arenas. It's now gone international. London, Paris, I don't know where else. And people are still following this, thinking that it's, it's like just real, Or just come to the acceptance that, look, it is planned, but, we're still going to pay, I don't know how much the tickets are. We're still going to go watch it live. And they're still following us. So can we label W as a cult also?
That's interesting. I like that. Yeah. And what I like is understanding how the cult characteristics do come through not just cult, like the cult I was in or a religious cult, but like you're saying, that sounds, there's the WWE, there's political cults, sports teams are cults, multi-level marketing teams have cults, families act as cults. I've even seen relationships that have cult characteristics. There's one leader and one follower, and that's how it works. Yeah,
Sure.
it's actually more of a pandemic than so
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Who would have thought, we would have used wrestling as an example in this
No,
conversation
but I
today?
like that. I'm gonna thank you for that.
And here we are.
I'm
Yo,
gonna add that to my list of cults.
it's like, it's scary, eh? It's honestly
It
scary.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah, but I suppose it goes back to what you were saying about people need to belong. So they'd rather
exactly.
belong than see the truth of it. They'd rather just
Because
enjoy the game than recognize
yeah,
that it is a game.
exactly. I mean, think about it, okay? If I was not accepted in high school or was bullied and girls didn't like me and I never really belonged and then oh, here's WWE or here's whatever else, or there's the sports team, okay, and they tell me, okay, there's this loyalty program, I can join their community now in this digital age. You get so glued on it, that becomes your family. That's where I belong now. So whatever it is, or how much millions they're actually making, there's a belonging, there's a community, and of course as an artist, you have to build a community, but I mean that's a separate type of building. But look at mainstream record labels these days, or mainstream artists such as Taylor Swift or Beyonce. It's also a cult, you
Yeah, a
know
very evil
or what
cult.
what what do they call them? Uh, the Swifties, the Swifties.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
God,
that's what Taylor fans are called, Swifties.
you're right.
Yeah, that's also a cult when you think about it. No matter how much the ticket is, if I can't afford to put food on my table, or I can't afford the mortgage or the rent, but that ticket is $500, I am going to pay to go watch Taylor Swift live. You know, not
Yeah,
thinking before we should think of an alcoholic in a family, where the family didn't have food because will it be the father or mother? And I mean, you mentioned also, coming from a similar, situation. But I'm just using this as an example. We will blame, because of the alcohol, we couldn't put food on the table. But now it's because of the cults. We're also neglecting, our families for it. I can put a scenario on the table about maybe a father abandoning his family to join a cult. The family is left hanging. But it's just gone so mainstream. But anyway, we are definitely going to touch on it, more, on the next shows, to come. I just want to ask like 3 questions. As a creative out there, how can I expand my consciousness?
oh,
Basic tips.
sun gazing. I mean, most people would jump to
Okay.
and say meditation and spending time alone, just connect, being. I love being alone now. I never thought I'd love it so much. I love living on my own because it gives me time to just be quiet and still and listen to inspiration, listen to the wind, listen to the birds, whatever's sending messages my way. That's that all works. But sun gazing, like I was explaining before, light's key. Light's key to of evolution of consciousness, and that's how I know that however dark it seems on the Earth stage now, however crazy things are getting, the fact is that the frequency of light is increasing, and that's measurable. It's being measured. Like the solar activity now, because the sun sends out flares, C class, M class, X class flares, and the frequency of the flares that are being sent out from the sun now, what wouldn't happen back in the day in a month now happen in a week. Like, so the sun is increasing in intensity, and that's increasing the vibrational frequency of everything. It's like accelerating the evolution of everything from our DNA to the planet itself. So the light is like shaking things up. So you get to see what was hidden in the darkness, but also like the planet itself has a vibrational frequency, which is called the Schumann resonances. And that's measured, and it's been measured as a long time at 7.83 hertz or something like that. Well, now it goes up to 40, 50, 60. So it's the measurements are increasing intensity. They've measured the highest vibratory like particle ever to come to Earth. I think it was called the God particle or something like that. So the whole evolutionary trajectory is being sped up at the moment. That's why things are the way they are. The Hindus understand these cycles of time as yugas, Y-U-G-A, and these yugas show the evolution of consciousness, sometimes in a downward trajectory, and then it goes into an upward trajectory. And we just passed the lowest trajectory, like down spike of this Kali Yuga. We're out of that now and going into the Dwapara Yuga, like that just happened the other month. And we're moving out of the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. You've probably heard that before, right? The age of Aquarius is about peace and love and unity. So that it's the light that's doing that. And for us, it's the light, mainly the light that's coming from the sun, but also the light from the stars, the light from the photon belts, the light from the moon. So what I do every morning when I can see it is I take the light of the sun into my eyes, and that expands my consciousness. I don't know exactly what it does, but I know that's what's inspiring me, sourcing me, healing me, energizing me. And that's what the first thing that I would recommend. And people still dismiss it as being some kind of hippie woo-woo bullshit, but it's not. It's a very if you can look back in the ancient history, and people call it sun worship, whatever you like, but relating to the sun as a primary source is it's part of human nature that we've been not been educated about. So it's being connected to the sun like that. It's also, even if you get the sun on your head, because the skull's porous, so it's going to be going into the head, into the pineal gland and pituitary glands. We need sunlight on our skin. Obviously not, don't go and fry yourself, but we need sunlight to continue to evolve, to continue to expand consciousness. And then the other one that I use is entheogens, sacred plant medicines, to expand my consciousness beyond what outside of that box.
Yeah. No, I'm with you with the sun. It reminds me of, so when you ask someone like, okay, who doesn't know, you like how you mentioned history, people don't read history, as we go back to the school system, it was designed that way. So whatever we learn there, we're not looking further and above than that. But if you look back in history, you would understand it. But what does the term amen mean? People don't even know that. They go to church or wherever and they say amen. So if we look at the roots of amen, it came from Amun Ra. Ra meaning the sun god, So they don't look at those things. So it's like, when you worship the sun, the effect it has on you. So Ra is, the sun god. Right. So it is, for me, I'm worshiping the sun as in worshiping Ra. That is why we say amen. But you see the church or
I love that.
any religious.
I didn't know that. That's beautiful.
Meaning of amen. I mean, ask anyone, who attends, church, example, for every Sunday. Why do we say amen at the end of the prayer? They don't know. And the church, doesn't tell them why we say, because it's linked to Amun Ra. Back in the day, it wasn't amen, it was Amun Ra. So that's where it actually came from, the sun god. So I'm with you on the sun. There's so much power, there. So thank you for sharing that. The next one I want to ask is, how would I, as a creative, heal emotional wounds? Would I experience it from childhood, teenage, adulthood?
Well, the emotions that we have, so our body stores emotions. And if those emotions aren't released, then trouble happens, problems happen, sickness happen, illness happen, cancers happen, blah, 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 from like stored emotions. So it's really important to move the emotions through the body. And so not be afraid of crying, not be afraid. Like, it's important to express if you feel anger, but just don't dump it on someone else. Don't be screaming in someone else's face. Go and scream into a pillow, scream in your car with your windows up. Like, express the emotions. Cry if you need to. Like, just snotty cries into a towel on a floor. Just let yourself just completely let it out. And then it's gone. Emotions is energy in motion. So let the energy, whatever it is, that's been, whether it's betrayal or abandonment or shame or guilt, just feel those emotions, and then they can move through and not stop us from, being who we are here to fully be. And that's not as easy. I'm not just saying that flippantly, because I know how hard that is. That takes a lot of work to really be honest about what wounds that we have. And that, and that might take work with some, another professional, whatever, to identify where these wounds are. But no one comes through childhood unscathed. We've all got wounds that need to be addressed and healed. And so there's the feeling is the healing. You might have heard that saying. So I've done a lot of rebirthing, which is another thing that I wanted to mention in terms of expanding consciousness. Like, breath work's really important. There's lots of different breath work techniques that are available to use, and you don't have to have a teacher for that. There are simple practices. Even just like having a longer out breath than in breath can be healing. So in terms of the emotional healing, feel the feelings, and then there's all about like forgiveness work and shadow work, where you look at your dark side and all those. So there is work that needs to be done. And then what I found that is the most healing for me is really being in nature, spending time lying on the earth, go and just like sit out there in the woods and just be. And then and the important is to be relaxed, because when we're relaxed is when healing can really happen. So anything that we need, whether it's energetic or physical or whatever, we can receive that most when we're healing. So I often just sit and watch the ocean, and then you get the waves. It's the ocean is such if you can get there, or any body of water, any mountains, really, any forests or whatever, nature is giving, or it's giving and giving healing energy. And so, take time out of the city, or go away from this, go outside and receive the energy. And that, for me, has been the most healing in terms of my emotional wounds.
So you can't run away from your trauma. You have to face it.
No. You do.
Accept it and face it and work through it.
Well, if you don't, then something else will happen and probably worse to help release the trauma. So it's better to feel your feelings. Like, I remember when my son was murdered, they wanted to give me drugs, I don't even know. Most people take them, just help me sleep, or so I wouldn't feel my emotions. And there's no way. I want to feel my feelings. I want to feel whatever's moving through me. I don't want to deny it or pretend. I'm here to feel fully. And even if it's uncomfortable, and sometimes it is extremely uncomfortable, but always know that even if you are in a paroxysm of like crying and screaming, it's going to pass. In fact, it's coming out. It's coming out. There will be an end. But to be blocked off and resistant to feeling feelings, like suppressing and overriding and medicating, it doesn't end well.
Medicating is suppressing. All you're doing is you're moving it aside for now until the medication wears off, and then it comes back in. Then you take the tablet again, you move it to the side. So I get what you're saying. It's not coming out.
And then addictions start, and then people that's how addictions can start, right? You're just trying to stop feeling what you need to feel.
Yeah. And what role would you say, reprogramming the subconscious mind plays in this?
Oh, that's foundational. That's foundational, right? The subconscious mind is basically our operating system. So it's important to examine your beliefs. I examine my beliefs, like believing in like just simple things like whether there's a higher power or not. Just examine all your beliefs to see what's true, what's not, and then to get rid of the false beliefs and seek truth. And that's all,
Yeah.
uh, written into the subconscious programming. That's fundamental.
Yeah. No, thank you. That does make a whole lot of sense to me. So the final question, for this podcast is, how does one now protect and empower themselves in this world we live in?
Well, firstly, to understand the bigger picture of what's going on, that we are under attack a lot of different ways. We're under attack, like psychologically and physically. And so to understand that we do need to protect ourselves, and what we need to protect ourselves from whether it's toxic foods or toxic pharmaceutical drugs or the electromagnetic radiation, chemtrails, to understand what we do need to protect ourselves from. That's fundamental, right? Because if you don't really know what you're being assaulted by, then it's pretty hard to be protected. But the main protection is to have a rock solid connection to a higher power, to the divine, to God or whatever, and then to ask for protection. You can just ask. I give thanks for protection. Actually, I give thanks for being protected. I don't have to be specific about whether that's from angels or crossed over loved ones or ancestors or whatever, but just ask for protection and trust that I'm being protected. That's fundamental for me. And then it's making sure that I'm physically strong, so being grounded, receiving sunlight, receiving high vibrational foods, lots of fresh fruit and vegetables, which is quite easy here in the tropics because that contains the highest photonic light. So make sure my body's strong. And then to make sure that, I'm not being filling my mind with a whole lot of garbage, that I'm not, it's not to say I don't watch some things that don't have any value, but not to be watching like politics and stuff like that. That's all poison and toxic to the mind, to be listening to these liars, lie. So you want to be seeking truth. That's the other, important part of being protected, is seeking truth, and then being aligned with your purpose, which is like to just be here and be a good person. Stay in integrity. And then when when you're in integrity with yourself and the higher power, then you are protected. To know that and trust that if you keep in alignment, if you live according to natural law, which is the law of the cosmos, do no harm. If you're living in integrity like that, you're already protected, or completely protected.
Yeah, when you're talking about, what to watch, at the point where I actually woke up, like the story I was telling you before, when I just said, I'm not going to go to the church anymore. There was just too many wires going on. I saw my TV, I just saw my TV. And I was like, I'm not watching this garbage anymore.
Exactly.
At the time, I didn't know why I was selling the TV. I never questioned it. I just followed my instinct on it, like no more TV. It's become too much of a distraction.
I should have mentioned that. Get rid of your television. That's one of the best ways easiest ways to protect yourself, is get rid of your television. The television is besides it looks like the cell phone now, the most powerful mind control device there is. That's why it's called programming. That's why, there's all flickering light. It's the whole thing of television is designed to keep people controlled. The news isn't news. It's just government propaganda to get people to think a certain way.
Yep.
So thank you for that reminder. Get rid of your television if you want to be protected.
Yeah, it's all propaganda. There's a guy that I follow on YouTube. He's called Crypto Teacher, and he always emphasizes that TV is your reality. Like there's certain things I do watch, but I'm very choosy on how I pick it out, because what I watch, for example, if it's a movie, for me, I feel it's something that's already happening in the world, or it's something that's going to happen. That's why he says TV is your reality. So there's certain things you watch, and then boom, you'll actually see it happening in the world. When we look at the Terminator movies, when it came out in the 90s already, and how artificial intelligence is evolving, there you go. You look at a movie like I, Robot, with Will Smith that was released back when I was still in school, and then you look at, the robotics that are out now, you know.
Well,
So
whoever is, I don't know, whoever, whatever is behind all these systems of control and manipulation and devolution of humankind, they understand the human mind better than we do. They know that we create through our thoughts. So that's why they put that shit out there, those movies and all that, is so they use, because they don't have creative ability, and I don't know who they are, but they use our creative power to manifest out into the world, to manifest violence and conflict and all that. So that's why there's so much of that's why television is reality, because it's creating reality through us and what visual images we receive. So by getting rid of that, hopefully, it would seem that there won't be those inhuman situations being created. I suppose in a perfect world, that's how it would work.
100%, Bella. No, thank you so much for that. I just want to conclude with, saying to the creators out there, who are listening to this episode, who are probably wondering to themselves, okay, how does this fit into my life? This is the foundation of it all. If you can master this, if you can take the advice from Bella, and master it in your life, you're going to see how your life actually evolves with whatever you're wanting to pursue, becoming an author, becoming a successful singer. This is the foundation of it all. It's not going to a fancy school or going to an art school or, learning about production or learning how to write. This is the foundation of it all.
Yeah.
Master
Yeah.
this and master the rest, in my opinion,
Right.
on it.
Yeah.
Just to clear that up. Bella, where can people find you online? Are your books available online still?
Yeah, they are. I have a website. It's www.feelingbetternaturally.love. And I have a YouTube channel called Feeling Better Naturally. And my book is available on Amazon. And the link for that is on my website. But it's also, if you just search the title New Human of New Earth, Isabella Young, it's available on Amazon. So,
And on Amazon, just for say, for example, listeners in South Africa, is there a Kindle version of it as well that makes it
yes.
easier for people to access?
Yeah, there's a Kindle version
nice.
of it as well. Yeah.
And are you on any social media platforms?
I have a Substack, which is called Feeling Better Naturally, but the social media, I have the same visceral responses I do was when I watch television. And I haven't had a television in my life for nearly 30 years. And I use social media because I had to, but I don't know. I think I should go back on, but I don't really at the moment. It's just, I just don't like it, that way of relating to people, really.
It is toxic. It is toxic. I got the same feels as you. I just try to use it so I can promote,
yes,
my work.
That's right. Yeah.
Wherever I can. I don't depend on it. I'm not concerned about vanity metrics, but just some sort of presence,
Yes.
Because we know it's controlled, they can control the algorithm. It's up to people who use social media to control the whole algorithm to get the information that actually matters most,
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for podcasts because it's so decentralized, that we can actually push out the truth on certain matters.
Right. And I'm so grateful that we can actually have truthful conversations. We're not, I'm sure that there's some things that we could say that would, you could be deplatformed or demonetized or whatever, but I really appreciate that you have a platform that allows me to speak freely. I appreciate that because speaking truthfully that's one of the most empowering things that we can do.
Yeah, I guess what, there is podcasters out there that are focused on, selfish metrics compared to selfless metrics who will be like, okay, this is what Bella speaks about. I can't allow her to come onto the podcast because it might affect, my monetization here. Whereas I'm here to say, no, we're gonna speak the truth, We're not here to be monetized, there's no financial benefits out of getting the truth out there. It's about empowering people. It's about protecting people like you are doing and leading them to the right sources that's going to be beneficial for their own life.
Well, there might not be financial benefits, but the benefits will be untold, and that's empowering in itself.
Yeah.
Thank you.
100%. Yeah. Bella, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you, and we are going to see each other soon. And I will be in contact as well, via email about creating Team Human.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Kino. I really enjoyed our conversation. Yeah.
Me too. Keep doing what you're doing. I appreciate you so much, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Yes, I will. And thank you for all that you're doing to contribute to the freedom and future of humanity. Thank you for providing this platform, because like I said, it helps with my healing. It helps other people, learn, and thank you for your work.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it.
So
exactly.
I'll chat to you soon, Bella.
Okay. Thanks, Kino.
Bye.
Bye.